Well, this is our 6th week in the series, Life Lessons. This is our final week in this series. After that, did I cut out a little bit? Yeah. So if I cut out, just throw that mic at me, and then I'll, because I have a voice. So. Being Recovery Month, I love Joni's opening prayer. It was wonderful because we're all facing recovery from one thing or another. It's the addiction to the identification of the ego or animal nature that's not our true essence. What's beautiful about the recovery communities is that they've showed us skillfully how to isolate that one thing that they're dealing with, put light on it, and realize how to get that thing out of their control of their life so they can regain the control of their life from their true essence, from their loving nature, which is totally blocked out by an addiction. So Frank, why don't you tell us about the early years of your life?
So I guess I started out in a good family. We're a fairly typical family, but we had a few things that were challenges. The disease of alcoholism within my family, and mental illness. And we were a Catholic family and went to church, and I found that I came away from that experience taking no useful spiritual tools. And it's not a reflection on Catholicism. That was me. I was closed-minded and resistant and didn't have any tools. And so at an early age, started to experience crises at an existential level. One of the earliest memories I have is standing in front of a full-length mirror. I was 4, maybe 5 years old, just sobbing because I was in so much pain and I couldn't comprehend why I was here on the planet to be in this much pain. And there was no explanation. And the most difficult years of my life were from 4 years until 11 years old. 11 years old, I discovered alcohol. And all of a sudden, that pain was removed. There was a peace of mind. Everything was all right with it. It was magical to me. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, they don't let 4-year-olds drink. So that 4-year-old or 5-year-old to 11-year-old, it was awful. It was just awful.
Mm-hmm. You'd said you'd experienced some bullying and some other things that disillusioned you and kind of propelled it. And I don't want to get too far into the rabbit hole on that, but you were disillusioned with a lot of established opportunities that should have been a good, safe environment. But
yeah, one example of that was early on, and it was a very small thing. But sometimes very small things, especially to young children, can be hugely impactful. And I went to church one day, and I had this little sample of cologne. And I really liked the smell of it. And so I went over to one of the other kids there, and I was like, here, check this out, take a smell of it. And I handed it to him, and he just did this. And it shocked me, and it was such a small thing. There were far greater travesties that I suffered. But it was like, I was totally disillusioned with what are we doing here? Mm-hmm. It was so disappointing that other human beings were cruel. Yeah. And I, in some ways, I'm grateful that I was maladjusted to life because, yes, it shouldn't be acceptable. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's kind of where, you come to the world as a sweet, innocent little being, and you look in the mirror and you look in the world, and you're not finding the hope or the kindness or the softness or your dreams supported or encouraged. And the emptiness of that creates such a dissonance within your heart and soul that you look for something to mask it, to escape from that, which alcohol was an avenue of successful release from the pain of all of that. How did it work out for you as you step forward in that?
Yeah, alcoholism was successful. No.
A success strategy.
Yeah, for a very short period of time. Early on it was great. But then what started to happen over time was that I would drink and it wouldn't work. It wouldn't produce that desired result. I wouldn't go to that place where I got that sense of release, that sense of ease and comfort. And that's when I began to become terrified, because there was no seeable solution. By the time I reached my end in my early 20s, my greatest fear was that I was going to live for a long time. I couldn't envision a life drunk or sober. And that was a horrible place to be.
A hopeless place.
Yes.
What does it feel like where you don't have any place to turn? And where did you find the strength to find a new way?
There's a Rumi poem that I came across recently that I just love. And it is, God gives a special medicine to those that have hurt so hard that they cannot hope. The hopers would feel slighted if they knew.
You had mentioned to us that there were a part of your rock bottom, if you will, the turning point in your life, and individuals that helped you get out of that hole. Would you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I used to say I was very fortunate that I was lucky that I came across people that were just way too serious about sobriety. And they were. But it wasn't luck. You know, and here we've got principles and axioms. And what I had was, by the time I had reached that desperate place to stop, the honest prayer had been said. I'd gotten to that place where I can't go on any longer. And I had gone to God and said, you know what, I just can't do this the way I've been doing it. I've got something different. And it was unconditioned. That's that honest prayer, is unconditioned. And today I know now, looking back on it, that any necessary resource for God to transform us will be supplied if we're in that place of being open to whatever God's will is in that circumstance. And amen. Thank you. And today, at 30 years of sobriety, I can look back on that and I can see demonstration after demonstration after demonstration of that principle. And it's available to all of us. What we have to do is get to that place where I'm done doing things the way I've been doing it. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to do something different, and then I'd be open-minded.
Real quick, I want to, you had said, well, before you would use the alcohol to alleviate the pain. What do you do now when you're feeling pain?
Yeah, a nasty unintended consequence of sobriety is unremitting consciousness. Okay?
Being awake.
I had no idea that was coming. I'm grateful. I probably would have drank a lot longer. And so, yes, at the outset, it was interminable. And my mind wanted to go back to a drink again and again and again because it had worked once. And so I was given a very simple prayer. And I was at a place where I was angry with God at that point and didn't really want to have much to do with a higher power of any kind. But they said, when the thought of a drink comes into your mind, ask God to remove the thought. God, please remove the thought. God, please remove the thought. God, please remove the thought. God, I wore him down. Okay? And eventually, that obsessive thought began to fade. I came to learn out later on, it's a spiritual principle. Emmett Fox teaches the golden key. Instead of thinking about the problem, think about God instead.
Mm-hmm. I think the neural pathways in our brain, and you had the thought, the drink will solve this problem. And your willingness to commit yourself to a new thought of, God remove the thought, is a new neural pathway in that brain to lead you to the next step of freedom. Matt's song, I will lead you through this journey. And your journey of 30 years has led you into an incredible life, Frank. If you don't know this man, you hope to meet him because he's one that you just want to hang around with because of the goodness of his fabric, of his soul. And he's built a beautiful life with his beloved Nina, wife of how many years now? Uh-oh. I'm so sorry.
It's funny. And I'm an engineer. You think, but I don't do math on the fly like this really well.
Okay, so I'm so sorry.
28 years.
28 years. 28 years and 2 beautiful
Gotta
children.
love it.
Yeah.
Deer in the headlights.
I'm so sorry, Frank. I should have prepared you for that one. Well, what you don't know, in that 28 years, Frank has dedicated his entire life to service. He has helped hundreds of men through their own level of walk through the journey of recovery, and through a commitment of time and energy beyond what is even fathomable. But I'm going to try and encompass it a little bit because Frank will never tell you. He serves on our Unity Church of the Hills board. He is an advocate for our facility, and anything that comes up with the facility, he's the point person that we go to, knows the plans and the plots and the blueprints of everything. He is an advocate for our Boy Scouts and an assistant to them in helping them receive their Eagle Scout in many ways and projects with our community. He's served in civic organizations, many of them, and he was the foundation support for recovery communities in Cedar Park and Leander. He has 2 meditation groups that he's a part of, a centering prayer and a men's recovery group whose name is, this is just lovely,
The Desperate Dudes Club.
Desperate Dudes Club. Do you feel the feet on the ground kind of feel of that, the humility of that? He has been a part of this community in so many ways, and I know I've not even brushed the top of it, but if you haven't ever seen him here before, it's because he's up there running our PowerPoint and projector for our services. This man is a heart of service with a humility, and I'm wanting to hear from you about what does service mean to you, and how is that imbued with our 5 principles in practice?
All right. So for me, service early on in my recovery process was very simple acts. There's this idea that you bring the body and the mind will follow. And so I started doing very simple acts of service. And this idea of doing something for someone else without expecting something in return was able to raise my self-esteem enough that I didn't feel it necessary to sabotage the blessings that started coming into my life in the course of sobriety. You know, one of the things that happens when you're an alcoholic, you wind out disappointing others, but yourself, time after time after time after time again. And that does horrible things to what we think of ourselves. And so disproportionately going and doing small acts of service in the recovery community made me feel good enough that I would be able to allow good things to happen. Like when I started dating Nina, my first prayer was, please God, don't let me screw this up. Okay. I didn't use that exact phraseology, but you get the drift. Today, what I know about service is that it is an act of faith. Every time you decide to put someone else's welfare ahead of your own, what you're doing is choosing to expend your resources, whether that is money or your energy, your experience, your attention, and most importantly, maybe your time, because it's so limited, to help someone else out. And so what does that require? I put my needs on the back burner in that effort. And so there's an act of faith that God is going to take care of me and what I need to be able to do this. The other flip side of that is that the resources are always provided. Whatever's needed to make that happen happens.
You minister to me, Frank, in that. And, saying yes to something larger than you feel like you are, like me becoming a minister to you all, it's an act of faith. And what I hear in what you tell in that is that as we say yes, the spirit of the I am that I am comes to increase that which we are to meet every need as we step forward into that journey. And so I just want us to all feel that same I am that I am is in you, calling you forward to something feeling bigger than you are, that it responds to your step forward and supplies everything needed for you to move forward, as you have experienced so fully in your life, Frank.
Yeah.
2 things I want to ask. One, it sounds like the inner voice has changed because through service now you're seeing good in your life. So I'll say a little bit about how the inner voice has changed over the years, and then I'll ask the next one.
Okay, so the inner dialogue, that inner life that we have, At first, I equated my mind to that of a untrained golden retriever and a bunch of garbage, okay? And that it's always going to go to the garbage. And developing the ability to go sit, stay to your consciousness is huge, okay? That unity principle that we have, number 3, where it's our thoughts that create our lives and our world. Well, if my thoughts are always in the garbage, what does my life look like? And it doesn't have necessarily anything to do with the exterior. It's all in here. And so the big ticket item is prayer, and most importantly, meditation. To me, meditation is where the avenue that takes me towards dominion over thought. And that occurs through intentional turning over my thought to God again and again and again, to consenting to the activity of God's work inside of me so that I can get out of the way and be that light that we are.
I'll save my question for next. Go ahead.
Well, that sounds like the second principle, is you're recognizing as you're stepping forth in faith, aligning your thoughts not with the garbage, but with the truth, and allowing that energy through sit, stay. I love that. That's a new way of the fourth principle, prayer and meditation, sit, stay in the truth, stay in the light, and then we move into that fifth of the manifestation of it as a whole new being, releasing the ego. I wonder, how does the role of spiritual community play in this whole journey of healing?
Well, it's huge, and there's so much here that's available to us, and I implore everybody here, if you're not taking full advantage of this, please give yourself that gift. We have the Men's Fellowship Network, we have the women's group, we have mastermind groups, spirit groups are rich. There are people here in my spirit group, and man, the honesty, the intimacy that occurs in that little community is so rich. And just a couple of months ago, we lost one of our spirit group members, and it was huge. But there were things, and I had known this woman for 20 plus years before that spirit group started, and there were things that she came forward with in that group that I'd never heard before. So take advantage of it. This church, this community offers a richness. Yeah.
To be seen and to be heard and to share your life with somebody, not to go through it alone, not to go through it. We're not meant to do it alone. And I got to just tell you, you create this. Your coming here creates this space. And in that space, we're able to gather with spirit groups or in any form. You want all women, you want all men, you want mixed, whatever. There's some way to participate for your soul to be seen and to journey together.
Frank, I'd like you to talk about what you see when you look in the mirror today. Not the stubble. Let's go a little deeper.
Long flowing hair. He asked me that question in between services, and it used to be abject self-hatred. It used to be, God, I couldn't see the good, Today, I just see me as I am. I can't say that it looks all divine, but it really is the aggregation of that divinity and that whole brokenness. Warts and all, receding hairline and all. It's glorious. It's amazing that I'm still here. We were talking about if life was fair, I would have plowed my motorcycle into a tree at 80 miles an hour. Instead, they just whipped by. I get to be here today. I'm so grateful.
Thank you for sharing that. Next steps, there's, as Joni mentioned, there are 11 recovery groups during the week. If for me, I had one summer where there was a proclivity to a substance. I was thinking about the next 15 minutes where I could get high next, and my whole life went down to that. But my addiction was to adrenaline. and identification of the ego. And if you don't have a substance addiction, but you're addicted to seeing the world through your ego's opinions of the world, there's other ways. There's People's Anonymous. There's A Course in Miracles, the spirit groups. I would strongly encourage you, before you hit the parking lot today, think of one thing you can do that will permanently transform your life, to pole vault over the obstacles that the ego places on you, to say you're not good enough, or life is hopeless, or whatever. Put that up. Invite Spirit to displace that thought with love. The energy of these recovery groups and the Course and Miracles, the energy level is unconditional love. And you say, just bring the body and the miracle's going to happen. But by being in that energy field, healing begins to take place. By practicing your meditation, traction begins to occur. And you'll begin to see the transformation we talk about in our mission statement occur in your life by practicing the principles, practicing realistic, simple practices that we put in life of prayer, meditation, the steps, whatever it is that resonates in your life. By the way, 12 steps are pure spirituality. There's no religion in the steps. And so if you don't have a practice, a spiritual practice, look at that. Go ahead.
Can I talk about
Please,
that? Because
yeah.
I want to talk about the development of a spiritual practice, and that it's not easy. Okay, it may be simple, but it is not easy. It took me 16 years after I started my recovery process to develop a consistent prayer and meditation practice. So if you've been working at it and struggling and you're not where you want to be, keep at it.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, once I got into it and was doing it for about a year, I went to the guy who was training me and I said, you know what, I've been doing this for a while. Nothing really is happening. He goes, okay, well, just do it for a decade and get back to me. So I did. And you know what? At a decade later, I didn't need to go back to him. It took me 10 years of watching one of my spiritual advisors and his wife, not literally watching, but knowing that they were praying together every morning before I worked up the gumption to sit down with Nina and go, can we pray together and meditate together in the morning? So you can work on these things for a while and then make significant progress. You can struggle with it and then advance.
Awesome. Thank you.
Frank, I am so grateful you're here
Yes.
today, and you are the message in flesh, and we are blessed to have you with us in our community. And if you guys want to connect more to Frank, he's going to be on this side of the sanctuary after service. Avail yourself of the opportunity to just touch your heart's energy with his.
Pretty amazing for a high school dropout.
Yeah.
Who is
Biker
now
high
an
school,
engineer.
So
That's
thank
a
you
whole
very
nother
much,
day.
Frank.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. If you like the message, we invite you to like it or share it. And we also want to let you know that we're on Instagram, Twitter, and we'll see you again next Sunday on Facebook at 11:25.
We're a New Thought church where lives are transformed, and we welcome you to check us out. Check out our website, unityhills.org. We'll see you next week.
Namaste.